breakfast. Time to talk opinions with Russell Brown from publicaddress.net, the hard news blog, and Media 7 Show TVNZ7. Morning, Russell.
Good morning.
Teapot tapes, of course. Do you think they'll be out by the end of the week?
Could well be. I get the impression that the legal situation is becoming interesting, and there seems to be a degree of opinion there now that maybe this wasn't, for the purposes of the Crimes Act, a private communication, because the two people involved did not have a reasonable expectation of privacy.
Yes, Brian Gould has been saying this morning, he's the Vice-Chancellor of Waikato University, he says that the police seem to have gone along with National's demands fairly compliantly. Yes,
and I personally, I think National, by making that complaint to the police, have put the police in a very difficult position because they're now under pressure to process it with dispatch, and whatever they do will be seen in a political light. And I think that general warning that the police issued to media, not go near this, was actually a little bit dubious.
Quite strange, wasn't it?
And basically the decision to go to the police was too cute by half, and it does seem to be coming back to bite them, frankly.
Yeah.
It is interesting seeing, that this has happened just at the point where John Key seemed bulletproof and unable to do any wrong. And I think you saw that in a lot of the initial reactions. People thought, this will just be good for John Key again, like everything is. But he's actually contrived to make it not that way. I think by the sense of victimhood that he expressed in those interviews yesterday was extraordinary. And now to have Millie Dowler's parents' lawyer come back and say cheap shot.
Yeah.
One of the more surprising days of this election campaign, or anyone. We knew that something was going to happen, but I don't think anyone quite knew it was going to be this.
Yeah, and then to go on and talk about relating it to suicide. You see, what happens if a couple of high-profile New Zealanders that are married have a conversation about their son or their daughter being suicidal, and a Sunday paper reports that, and then they commit suicide? What a weird, kind of convoluted, long bow to draw sort of scenario.
Yeah, it was. It was a bizarre thing to say. And also, just in the sentence before that, he also said, a high-profile New Zealander could be talking to his wife. Whoa, let's unpack that, shall we? So it is really quite fascinating that this is happening. And frankly, I have no sympathy for them whatsoever.
No, not at all.
The other thing that Brian Gould pointed out was that this happens to politicians.
Yeah.
He said there's barely a high-profile politician in the country who hasn't been caught on an open mic. And he pointed out, which I'd forgotten, Michael Cullen.
Yes.
I think it was during Labour's last term.
That's right.
Made some comments he wished he hadn't made because he didn't realise the mic was on.
That was to Guy on Espiner.
For a TV interview, to Guy on Espiner,
Yeah.
And that was a huge story, and you have to say that a lot of the people crying foul on the right-wing side of the blogosphere were only too happy to make hay with that.
Yeah.
So, it is. It's fascinating. And as I said, I really have no sympathy. The idea of Key beginning his second term by taking a newspaper editor to court on criminal charges.
Yeah.
Doesn't look good. It looks a bit,
And just staying with the media side of things. What about this? And getting back to the police order not to not to put it out there. What is stopping though the media organisation giving it up and just saying, "Oh look, we're going to hand it over to a news organisation overseas"?
Yes. Well, that would probably actually still be a breach of the law, to be honest. Because they were making the contents of the discussion known.
Then what if it was done anonymously?
Yes, well, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? The courts generally take, when you're talking about suppression laws and that sort of thing, the courts generally take a fairly dim view of that. That might be a stunt that's too cute by half. But I think what we are seeing clearly is the key parts of the conversation being leaked anyway.
Right, through questioning.
Into that.
Yeah.
It's funny because I was very surprised at how many people were initially insisting that there was nothing in there and that almost that the Herald on Sunday had made the whole thing up.
Yeah.
That doesn't actually happen in newspapers. You don't really go that far out on the limb for nothing. Clearly it wasn't a story of the kind of compelling public interest where you just publish and be damned. But there's quite a lot of territory between that and no story at all.
And I'm hoping that we will actually hear the audio recording as opposed to just the transcript, because I've got the feeling that the damage will be also in the way it's said, whatever is said.
No, quite likely, and it doesn't. Yeah, frankly, it doesn't chime well with Key's media public persona as the nice guy. And it was absurd to think we could get that far in business and politics and be the nice doofus everyman that he's been projecting.
What puzzles me is that we're probably going to hear the way he normally talks in the debating chamber, right? That the public don't, for some reason, it never gets reported, the public never see it, they don't watch parliamentary TV, but he can come across as this kind of smug sort of character in the debating chamber, but people just don't see it.
And I think the other thing that was shown up in the debating chamber was when we had the jumper a few weeks ago. And he really seemed to think that it was all about him. And I kind of think that's what you saw also in those answers yesterday. Yeah. There's a certain self-centeredness there that hasn't been part of the Key brand and has been flushed out by what's happened. So, fascinating. And I have to say, all credit to Toby Manhire at Listener Live for staying on top of this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
He's making himself quite indispensable.
Indeed, that's a great blog to go. Listener.co.nz and follow the link from the front page. Russell, we look forward to the Media 7 show on Thursday evening as well. Cheers.
Oh, yeah, Media 7 show on Thursday evening, Sparta special, bit of the grilling for Jonathan Coleman, the Minister of Broadcasting. It's a pretty good show, worth watching. I'm going to go to the meeting, and hopefully we're going to get the power back on in Point Chevalier one day.
Yeah, indeed, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Thanks, Russell.
Righto.
Cheers.
See you, man.